My name is Kiara and my pronouns are she series. I'm a communications and media studies major, and some identities that are important to me are being black, bisexual, and being a woman.
Hi, my name is Mariah Villanova. I'm a senior here at Southern. I'm a public health major minoring in psychology. I am also a student worker here at the VPOS Center. That's the Violence Prevention Victim Advocacy Support Center. I also identify with the pronouns her or she. I am a Afro-Latina. I come from the US, but I am Puerto Rican and half Dominican, and I am also pansexual.
My name is Riley Diane Jace Rivas. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am a theater major with a studio arts minor, and some important identities and communities to me. I'm pansexual and non-binary, so the LGBT community. I'm Puerto Rican, and I have Asperger's syndrome and ADHD.
So, hi guys, my name is Jeria McIntosh. I am a junior. My major is social work. My pronouns are she, hers, hers. And some of the identities that I hold, I am bisexual, I am black, I am a black woman, I also identify as a Christian, I am religious, and I also, here at Southern, I am a student worker and also a student leader.
Hello everyone, my name is Shania Basilian. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an exercise science major with a minor in psychology, and I'm a Haitian minority woman that is a part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Every day I wonder if what I say or what I do will offend someone, and I realized I didn't have to be worried as much as I had to be aware and use my best judgment.
So first, I named a few earlier, but I wanted to talk about how me identifying as a half Puerto Rican, half Dominican woman and labeling myself as a Afro-Latina woman is sort of a doozy. I would say that it's very problematic in terms of traditional aspects in the culture because with the negative attitude towards those who are of darker skin, especially typically in the Latin American community, I would say that has impacted me a lot, not only because my mother is of darker skin than me, but as well as trying to find myself and the information that is accessible to me. And for a while, I did not know that being Dominican or even being Puerto Rican had any sort of African descent. Not to mention growing up when I would see soap operas and the black actors would be the servants or the maids, and even seeing that certain newscasters that were on Spanish programs were of lighter skin tone. And I didn't realize it until growing up and seeing sort of how my mother was treated, seeing how certain parts of my family being Puerto Rican would negatively discriminate or stereotype my Dominican side and vice versa. And kind of like taking away the aspect that, just because somebody is of darker skin or has a sort of African descent does not take away the fact that their culture does not take away the fact that they speak a certain language. And having to advocate in regards to educating my family on type breaking down those bad habits and those attitudes that has been embedded into them for a while. And because even growing up, my mother would be considered as ordinary and labeled as that, where me being of lighter skin and having a certain shape of nose would be considered as fine, or considered as like of wealth, of money, of success. And that's clearly not the case. And for a long time, I've had to kind of fight to, educate people. For a lot of times, I noticed that certain friends of mine who were of even lighter skin than I was would, you know, look down on me because I did have black roots, that my mother was of darker skin, and I was looked at as to only identify as my lighter side, which would be Puerto Rican. And it's very hurtful, and um, it makes me wonder how much hope I have in people, because it doesn't go through my head how somebody can um, feel some sort of hate and feel an intimidation because of somebody's skin complexion.
So not so frequently anymore, but growing up, I was frequently mocked for the size of my lips or the texture of my hair, because curly hair wasn't really a thing people accepted until a couple years back. And now, just constant discomfort with being misgendered frequently, and bathroom usage and then just on the Asperger's and ADHD side, troubles focusing and socializing and fitting in with people with everything already going on.
My identities, they do, some of them impact my daily life, especially being involved in the community here at Southern. I'm always working constantly nonstop, just to better Southern as a whole, and also get to work closely with other students. In terms of my personal identities, I definitely believe as a Black woman, it does impact my life daily, because in society lately, we haven't been treated with the most respect, and feel that society has excluded us. It is a struggle for a lot of us today. As a bisexual woman, it doesn't impact me as too much, but I recently came out to my family and friends, and it has helped me to grow in a way. I feel more confident with who I am as a person.
Being Black and dressing more masculine, I worry about the authorities interpreting me as someone else. It's a shame that I have to adjust my appearance when going into certain stores just because I don't want to look too suspicious. This impacts me because I feel that no one should be judged by the way they dress or their skin color. I also feel like identifying as a woman will also impact my future career. Studies show that Black women are the least paid in the same position as other races and genders. This affects me because I know my capabilities and I want to be just as competitive as others.
I have felt otherness around other women because I'm bisexual, and around men because I'm bisexual and a woman.
Yes. um, it's for my Puerto Rican side. And this is not for every Puerto Rican, but for the Puerto Ricans that I have encountered with, um, when I tell them that I'm also half Dominican, it's kind of like a snare. It's like, oh, you're Black. Or it's like, ew, you're Dominican. There's such a, I don't know why there's such a big um, confrontation between both countries. I never understood that, when especially both countries are a lot similar. And having to deal with that kind of hurts, because I've even been excluded from family where I would be kicked out of family functions because my mother was discriminated by her darker skin complexion. I have lost friends because I've gotten into arguments where I'm trying to educate them on my African lineage as well as identifying the African lineage within the Puerto Rican community and getting lashback. Um, Another thing too is just the fact that anybody would try to make something that's a part of me less than, and that is extremely makes it's unsettling as well as um, hurtful. I I personally would never make somebody feel less than they are just because they come from a certain country or because they identify more with another identity. The only reason why I identify more with my Dominican side is because I was raised within that household. My accent when I speak Spanish is of a Dominican accent and slang and its own dialect. And um, I've gotten a lot of backlash because I have identified as Dominican, and it's hurtful because I love both sides. And because of that negative impact, I feel like it's made me less interested in learning the heritage of my Puerto Rican side. And I have learned from the errors of my ways and knowing that I should be better than those people who discriminated me and stereotyped me. I shouldn't stereotype all Puerto Ricans as being racist. And, um, but it definitely has hurt me to think that, I'm tied between two sides. And it's like I either say I'm just Puerto Rican or I either say I'm just Dominican instead of saying that I'm both and embracing both cultures and having that melting pot of being um, aware of aware of the cultural beauty that is both countries and enjoying the food and enjoying the dancing.
So I'm half white, half Puerto Rican, and there's a lot of so I wasn't raised speaking Spanish, and I have quite a few family members that I can't even communicate with on my Spanish side because they only speak Spanish. And just as like a non-cis, like gay person in the LGBT community, there's always a little bit of exclusion or discrimination with trying to keep spaces like pan, trans, and biphobia and stuff within the community. And then within the theater community, there's basically only room for cis white people, and I'm white passing, so I end up playing a lot of white roles. But there's always the problem of not having any role that matches my identity, both in terms of roles actually being written or being able to be casted as someone who identifies like me.
Yes, I do. When it comes to being a Christian, because I identify as bisexual, not necessarily all churches and people who share the same religious views as you respect your identity as someone from the LGBTQ community, because usually it is seen as a sin.
Being a part of the LGBTQ plus community can become difficult for me with my family because they have their own thoughts on how I should present myself. I do respect how they feel, but I also try to educate them as well on our differences and how they can support me better.
I've become a lot more open to talking to people about their process and about their experience, and I've become a lot more knowledgeable about myself and gotten better information about how to spread awareness.
Um, I would say it's made me a lot more educated. on to where I come from, it kind of gives me a sense of identity and knowing who I am. There's something about knowing your history and learning your lineage that it kind of brings everything full circle, and it kind of makes you feel more whole. As I started doing more research on my African descent, as far as in regards to my Dominican side, it's been such an eye opening experience and also heartbreaking because I learned how my community has suffered and how my community has been taken from learning who they are. A lot of times, stigma comes from the ignorance of not knowing. And certain people just generally don't know that, we shouldn't discriminate towards those of darker skin complexions within our communities because at the end of the day, they come from the same culture. The only thing that's different is their skin complexion. And I think it's made me a stronger person. It's made me more vocal. It's made me more confident. I feel like being involved in educating and um, and finding that sense of purpose within identifying myself in my Spanish community has definitely helped a lot with just being who I am.
Lately, I had to do some self-reflecting about my involvement in my church and how their treatment would affect me as a person because of my identity.
So in high school, literally theater saved my life. It was looking forward to drama club every week that really kept me going. And whenever I was at my lowest, I was always like, I can't do anything. I can't end shit because I have a commitment. I've made a commitment to these people, and at this point, that's what I used to show myself that I was important, that people were depending on me, and that I'd be hard to replace in that sense more than anything else. And then within the LGBTQ plus community, just learning personal acceptance and self-expression and not just conforming, I guess. And accepting all the other facets of me through that.
Being involved in the community impacts my life because I'm able to spread my knowledge to educate people on various aspects that they may not know much of. This impacts me because it makes me feel good to spread positive messages and to be a voice for the unheard people.
Including LGBTQ topics in the discussion, and promoting pronouns in the getting to know you phase.
I would feel like some ways that students, faculty, staff, or peers of mine could support me is understanding and respecting who I am. Just knowing and taking the time to listen and to asking respectable questions because I feel like a lot of times people feel intimidated to ask questions if they generally just don't know. But if anything, that makes me so happy that somebody is interested in learning more about where I come from and the community that I'm in and its beauty of its culture and traditions and kind of warming because I would consider that I do the same. That when I meet somebody, I love to learn where they come from, who they are, what's their background, because this is what makes up someone. And I think by asking me questions, showing support during, especially now during Black Lives Matter, because being Afro Latina, this affects me as well, and supporting the support of human rights and supporting the support against racism and discrimination and prejudice toward those of darker skin complexion as well as other countries.
I feel like faculty and peers can support me better by respecting pronouns more, whether that's asking for them up front or maybe like a sheet or something when you start a class, but also like respecting them after that initial day. I've had a lot of professors that I've either told or corrected on my pronouns, and for that day they were really good about them, but every time afterwards they just never remembered or never stuck to it. It's like sharing your identity with someone isn't a one-time thing. It's something that they need to keep up on. And then within the theater department specifically, more plays with roles for people of color and gender nonconforming people. I mean, within the theater community as a whole, not even the department, more roles for featuring or of gender nonconforming people.
Just listen to what we have to say. If we have a complaint or we feel that we are not being treated equally as our other peers, I think it's very important to listen to our concerns, because if we want to become a aspiring social justice school, we really need to work on that. Also, provide more resources for us, like especially in terms of counseling. I personally don't see anyone that looks like me in counseling services, and I find it difficult to talk to someone about certain problems that they have no background knowledge of, because they do not come from the same community as me, or don't share or don't know what experience that I've gone through.
One way other peers can better support me and others is by being supportive and understanding of our differences and try not to belittle someone because of them. This is very important because the goal is to ensure that people are able to be themselves without anyone criticizing them. There have been times where I've experienced negative comments because of how I present myself, but I use their responses as a learning step to educate them on why it isn't appropriate and in fact can be hurtful to others.
Yes, they're mostly the cast of Pose, the Netflix show, Billy Porter, MJ Rogers, India Moore.
I would say that if I would consider someone a role model, I would consider Celia Cruz. She is a Afro Latina. Um, she was a big Cuban Spanish singer, and she was of darker skin complexion and was always looked down upon because her nose was wide, because she didn't look a certain way, she wasn't fair skinned and pinup, and she didn't let that affect her. She used her talents and her voice and her passion in singing to make strides in breaking down those barriers of that a woman of darker skin complexion could be just as much of a star as someone who is of lighter skin. And she's a big role model of mine. I always loved her because I saw how much love she expressed to her fans and the people that she was around, instead of letting that hate build hate within herself. And that was a big reason why I've always loved Celia Cruz.
So I wish someone of all my identities was in the light. I mean, there are people who have aspects of who I am, but I haven't really ever seen anyone who has everything I listed off with the first question really be in the light. I mean, I have role models within my identities, though, I guess. Like recently, more and more celebrities are coming out as genderqueer or non-binary or gender fluid. A couple examples being like Ezra Miller and Miley Cyrus. Personally, really respect her and what she's been trying to do for like the LGBT community and everything. And then moving on, when I was looking into people who I share identities with who were more in the light, I found Mary Gonzalez, who's a Texas House representative, and she's both Hispanic and pansexual. And I just thought that was so incredible to see someone who I share that much with, and who's a woman in politics, who's a Democrat in Texas. Like, I haven't looked into her enough, but I hold immense respect for her. And then moving on from that, like the last thing I have, like Asperger's, it still has a very negative public view. There's like TV shows with characters who have it, but just in terms of representation, like looking through the Wikipedia article of famous people with Asperger's syndrome, it's just really a sad list of like shooters and people imprisoned, and it just really hurt seeing other aspects of myself becoming more accepted over time, but this one part still being so villainized. Sorry.
My role models in my life that share the same identities as me, one of them I still look to today is a celebrity, Janelle Monáe. I love her. I always listened to her music and watched her at a young age, and she just inspired me to just be who I am and just be confident in my skin, especially as a Black woman. And I still listen to her music all the time. I just love her. Role models personally, like in my life, my sorority sister, Katia Bagwell. I really look up to her just because like she was so involved in everything on campus, and she left her mark here as a student leader once she graduated, and I want to do the same as well. And also my mom.
One way other peers can better support me and others is by being supportive and understanding of our differences and try not to belittle someone because of them. This is very important because the goal is to ensure that people are able to be themselves without anyone criticizing them. There have been times where I've experienced negative comments because of how I present myself, but I use their responses as a learning step to educate them on why it isn't appropriate and in fact can be hurtful to others.
I would say my identity is always changing and always specifying, because as I grow older, I learn more things about myself. I learn new ways of how to describe who I am. So I think that something that people should understand is that when you constantly learning about yourself, constantly learning who you are, constantly learning different ways of expressing who you are. And I feel like that in and of itself, this video is probably not going to be as this as similar as it would be maybe 10 years from now, but definitely identifying those factors that represent me um, through the family that I've come from is definitely important.